Okay, welcome back. This is part 2. If you haven't watched part 1 where I cover the jet and right combo guide, I would suggest for you to go and check that out first before we get started on this one, because this one isn't necessarily the primary combo. The main one you want to start your combo with is going to be jet and right because it's much more efficient, whereas this one is meant to give the deck a bit of resiliency, so it's utilized in a different way. So go and check that one out first and then come back. But for those of you that already watched that combo guide, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it helpful. But now let's try to focus on what we can do with Tengu. Because why Tengu? One of the issues the deck has is the lack of non-tuners and the amount of resiliency the deck has going second. Tengu seems to solve that issue. It's a recurring non-tuner that has to be interacted with in a particular way, meaning if they banish it, it floats. If they bounce to your hand, it floats. If they destroy it, it floats. If they return to your deck, then it won't trigger. So not every deck has access to that type of interaction. So I'll be showing you guys some combos that you can do with it. And then you can figure out certain sequences that you feel like, oh, I could do this instead, or I can take it this way, because you can take it almost anywhere, which is why they're so fun, which is why these types of decks are so exciting. One of the issues you'll face though, opening up your Tengu with your jets. This is not an ideal situation, which is why you prefer to open up Tengu with overtake. But you don't want to solely rely on this. That's not realistic because you're going to draw this without this. So you need to find a way to mitigate that, right? So there's ways to search the jet, but you need ways to discard the jet. So you do it through Venture Engine Rights, and then right will get you to Fateful, and then Fateful will discard the jet Synchron from your hand. And you need more ways to do that. You can force burial this, you can warm for one this, or this is essentially this. And the main reason we're actually playing the Walker package to mitigate this issue, right? You do not want to see this without any of these. And it's not only for that purpose. It's the initial purpose, but it's so versatile that you can use these for something else. You can use these to the Synchro instead. You can make into your ASD, which is going to make your immune speeder. This 3-card combo, if you haven't seen the combo guide, in the deck profile, I showcase what you can do, which is pretty nice. It's essentially the same thing you would do with this, except you're utilizing Reborn Tengu. Assuming you require the resiliency of Tengu's floating effect. Go into Jet Warrior, bounce first, float into the second Tengu, go to a Yazi, pop something, they interact with the Yazi, they interact with the Yazi float, get the last Tengu, and you still have this in grave, you go speeder then. And that's the reason why you play this and this, especially this, because you want to avoid this situation. But moving past that, we're going to just showcase the combo of what you can do with just these two. Alright, so you summon your Tengu, activate Overtake, summon Jet, Synchro. The only vulnerability here is that Tengu's chanting 1, Speeder's chanting 2, so they can ash you. So that's the only issue. But like if you can find a way to where they preemptively use an Ash Blossom and you have tactics, then that makes this possible because you just rip the last interaction that they possibly have. So chain 1, chain 2, Stardust, Assault, Jet, Tengu. Resolution, effective Stardust. Then you Synchro for TG. These are both mandatory, so you can chain them in any way you want. But ideally, you want to go chain 1, chain 2 because you do not want to draw the third Tengu. And then you go into ASD, chain 1, chain 2, draw, activate Illumination, press draw. So like I mentioned in the first combo guide is that you can take this sequence in any way you see fit depending on your situation, whether you be going second, whether you're going first, whether you know the matchup, you know what I mean? So it all varies. So for example, you can go for a Yazi, you can go for a bounce. So it's a various amount of ways you can take this. But let's just try to freestyle a bit and see where we can go. Because at the end of the day, you still want to end on your full board. And sometimes you might miss a step or you might anticipate incorrectly. And that does happen, and that's okay because that's a learning process. But as long as you know that the route you took is not the correct one and it doesn't net you the most value. Because you don't want to constantly be doing that sequence and not try something different, because something different might get you that extra draw, that extra boss monster that might have won you the game. Let's go with this. Chain 1, chain 2. Something to keep in mind, and one of you mentioned it in the last video, is that you can make this spatter with the trail token. So keep that in mind, okay? Because it can be overlooked sometimes. So you can do Excel effect, sending Stardust. It's a level 9. Since the trail token is a dragon, you can make this spatter. Yugioh. We'll use Excel. Synchro into Baron. So we draw twice. You activate Stardust effect, distributing this spatter. And your 2 effects trigger. Trail and Assault, Banishing Assault, reviving this spatter, Trail Summon. And there's gonna be times where you can Reborn a tuner and synchro for a 6, get a token, or make it into a Yazi. And it'll vary on your situation, but that's the cool thing about this. It's so insane. Draw. So you can decide whether you want to rip for 2 or dig deeper into your deck. For example, you can do once, right? Rip 1, discard a random card for Jet. Summon Jet. Intro 6, chain 1, chain 2, draw. And then you can use the spatter, whether you play Starlight Warrior or Changi, you can reborn this, go nuke. But for now, since we're going first, we can reborn this and go into a Crystal Wing. And draw another card. You have your Assault back in grave, utilize it next turn. For example, let's say on your turn, you use your Crystal Wing for some reason, I don't know. You negated something. So then you tribute the Crystal Wing, reborning this, right? Triggering Assault, reviving your Crystal Wing, and using its effect again. So like niche things like that is a cool thing to have. That's essentially what you can do, just based off freestyle. It'll vary. There's no set combo because you can take it any way you want, depending on what boss monsters you play. But this is just an example of how I utilize the extra deck I'm currently using. And then you can take a look at what you drew. Like, it's pretty insane. See, this is good if you draw into it, open with it, it's amazing. Because this could facilitate your Omega, your Crystal Wing with the Ant, assuming you didn't use it, and then use this as a body to make your Baron, because you could increase with Illumination. You haven't used Illumination yet, it's just nice. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do the Immune Speeder through Stardust Dragon. Because it's a bit more fragile, but it's nonetheless an option that you can do. So you summon Tengu, activate Overtake, summon Jet. You go into Excel this time. You trigger your Tengu. This is what I mean by it's vulnerable. But there's ways to use this as bait for your opponent, right? Because remember, this is not the goal. The goal is resolving Speeder. So the more ways you have to bait your opponent into prematurely utilizing their interactions, the better it is for you. Because, okay, well, this seems important. They might ask that because otherwise they get another Tengu and another Tengu. So that you got what you wanted. You know what I mean? Because then you can special souls and go Speeder, summon, activate right, you know, stuff like that. The whole point is not solely relying on this to resolve. The point is using this as a sequence to your initial objective. And you use Excel. So if you're going second and you're doing this route, you can send Assault, making it a level 3, right? And then you can go into Yazi, right? And then Yazi, and then you get a third float. And then you can pop, they interact with it, they interact with the float. It doesn't matter. You still have access to your Speeder because you have Jet and Grave. Like, that's the cool thing about this, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily because this is the only line you can do and it solely relies on this. There might be a time where this is the only line you have, but it's not meant to be the primary play. Does that make sense? But in this case, we're just going to send Jet. So we're going to reduce. It's a level 4. See? So chain 1, chain 2. So they can't ash you here, assuming they didn't ash you earlier. Last Tengu. And then here you activate effect, summon Stardust, Synchro summon to Speeder. And my build at the moment, I'm only playing 2 Jet. To increase the ceiling of this sequence, you need to play 3 Jet. Otherwise, you'll just be left with this. I mean, this is not the worst, but like if you're going second and you're trying to pick up board apart, then it should be fine because you would have gone either the Yazi route, you would have bounced something before anything. And it'll vary. It varies. You can't really give a definitive line because every game will be vastly different. The way they interact with you, maybe they impermed you, maybe they ashed you, Maybe they bounce something, you know, so it'll vary. You activate effects, activate. So once you get to this point, it's whether you want to get a few draws or you just want to have a board. Because you can easily just go Omega Rip 2 and the Spatter. That's the obvious one. Or you can set up a Satellite Warrior on your opponent's turn, depending if you know you're going to go against Lab, you know what I mean? If you're going against like a backrow deck, or if you're going to be against Cash, you Synchro here, chain 1, chain 2, draw. You can go Baron here. You can pitch the card you drew, go into formula, effect, draw card. And then you can go to Spatter here. You can leave this as a setup for Starlight Warrior. You can go Yugioh. Or you can go to Spatter. And then we still have access to Stardust, Jupiter Spatter, summon. You have 2 triggers. 1, 2, summon, this gets banished. Reborn, Spatter. You can have access to Assault, reviving it, decreasing, or you can just go into double hand rip. You can rip 1. You could even just go revive Stardust. Effective Stardust elimination. Increase, go Satellite Warrior, pop, reduce, go Crystal Wing. You don't draw, that's the difference, because we didn't prioritize TG Hyper Librarian. But I think if you were to play the 3rd jet, that would allow you to have access to TG as well. What happens if we do play the 3rd jet? Well, let's find out. Activate, special. Draw. Illumination, please. Draw. Stardust. Double trigger, 1, 2. Banish, summon. You can revive this, go into Stardust. Get a token of Trail. Have access to Satellite, you know. But just do double hand rip. Draw. Rip. Effect. Rip. So it'll be determined by you whether you feel like adding the 3rd Jet Synchron would be worthwhile. You get to draw 3 more cards and you get to this. Okay, so this is the 3-card combo I showcased in a deck profile where I told you how resilient it can be depending on going 1st or 2nd, but going 1st is pretty insane. So you go activate effects, discarding the jet. If they ask you there, it's fine. You have a blank card, discard it, go speeder anyways. It's pretty cool. But if they don't, you just summon this, special your ant. If you're going 2nd, you can choose to summon Tengu, go Yugioh, and try to bait back row interactions. Pretty cool, but you just preserve this. Summon SD, activate effects, reviving your jet. Remember, if the imperm there, it's okay. You just summon this, and you're fine. So you summon Tengu. You activate effect, Stardust, speeder, chain 1, chain 2, so of course Tengu. On resolution, activate effect, adding illumination, then you go TG, triggering Tengu, and then right here you can go into Omega, draw a card, and you can rip a card now, activate, special trail, you can go into a 6, chain 1, chain 2, chain 3, 1. So then you can pitch for jet, Synchro formula, 1, 2. But we can go to Spatter. Draw. We still have access to Trail and Stardust, Illumination, Salt Synchron. So right here you can special summon Omega, hand rip again, or you can sequence it in a way where you just establish your board and tribute to Spatter, trigger, Reborn your Spatter, banish, special your Trail. You can go Baron, draw a card. You can effect illumination, reducing Trail, banish, this back to your graveyard, into draw a card. You can then use Excel's effects, whether you send Assault to the graveyard, make it level 3, go Crystal Wing there, or you can leave it as it is and set up a Satellite Warrior to destroy your opponent's cards, which is pretty insane. So depending on what else you drew, it'll reinforce your board. If they hand trapped you, you can summon this, make a Herald if you feel like it's better. You have a book, But that's basically gonna wrap this one up. There's gonna be various combos, various sequences that you could utilize, but this is just an introduction to what you can do with the deck itself. And remember, you can change up your extra deck however you feel comfortable with. This is just the list I've been playing and it worked out. And of course the deck will change once Revolution Synchron comes out. And of course I'll do another combo guide for that. But as of now, just have some fun. Hopefully you found these 2 videos helpful. Hopefully you understand the deck a little bit better. And if you watched this far, thank you. Appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe if you haven't, and thanks for watching.